I've been up here for a lot of years and talking about a lot of things. And it hit me the other week of just how confounded or perplexed someone could become and listening to the massive amount of time I've been up here rattling away on light and sound principles. And it's quite easy to see how one would certainly become overburdened or confused or wonder if they even had the ability to understand anything that was being talked about. Now, dear ones, I've talked about this before, but I cannot tell you, of course, the teachings are profound. And of course, you're going to hear things you don't have a clue about. And you're going to be asked to understand things that are so far out of your intellectual senses that you will feel you don't have a prayer to understand it. And then your own negative energies will feed this and play upon it and work you up into a lather, almost convincing you that this is just way too far above me and there's just no way I can understand it. Now, I want to give a warning on this. If you are a babe on the spiritual path, then your own mind is going to be looking at the transcendency of all these principles, how complicated they are, how they're always being broken down, divisionalized, and it comes up with the wrong assessment. Our own mind, I tell you what, it can't figure out what to do sometimes, let alone figure out what the divine mysteries are. And when you come onto a path like this, even my own chelas, and you listen to me up here talking about certain things, and if I'm way over your head, you've got to be careful that you don't get sucked into this idea that it is just too exalted or too transcendental for you. And what you don't understand, if I may be bold, is that your own soul self, your own Surat, has not come out yet and isn't leading your charge. Your intellectual senses are leading the charge, or your emotional senses are, or your karmic situations are determining how you're going to view something or relate to something. And the whole thing can just turn into a mess. And you feel that you're the lowliest, stupidest, most unqualified person for the path. That was certainly my experience. There was no way I could understand these things. And I wasn't that dumb, but I wasn't that smart either, intellectually, academically. And I'd read some of these things and I understood what was read, but how it applied to me and the deeper meaning and what I should do as a result, many of these things just whisked right over my head as a young man. Now, I tell you what, if I can come to understand it, you can too. And I just remained very, very patient. And I had a lot of faith and trust. And I really believed that in time, if I was diligent, I could understand all these things. Well, it didn't quite work out that way. My mind is still just as dumb as it was before. But what happened, loved ones, is my own consciousness that belongs to soul, not the mind now, soul's consciousness, resurrected itself and started leading the charge. Now all your conclusions, all your delving, all your attempts at understanding truth are done by the consciousness, and the consciousness knows all things. It can penetrate all mysteries. There's nothing that will baffle it. It's like child's play. But if one is not patient enough to subdue their minds, bickering or complaint about things being too lofty, or this, I've never even heard this. And if you take that lead, you'll knock yourself right off the path. You'll be convinced you don't have the mental chutzpah to penetrate the mysteries and understand them. And I'm telling you right now, you don't have the mental chutzpah, the mental intelligence, not even the Harvard graduate, your keenest professors, your highest geniuses in their mind cannot make heads or tails of spiritual, mystical principles. So don't be buffooned by that. by your own mind, by its own arrogance, and thinking that it can understand anything that it hears. This is not true. True spiritual truth exists beyond the mental senses. And just as far as it being diagrammed, here's our soul right here. Here's our minds right in through here. Here's our physical body. We all have these bodies. For those of you that are new, we have a physical body, but this is not the only one. When we translate at the end of life, this body has to stay on the earth plane and return to dust, right? Well, then where do we go? What happens? Some people say, well, there's no way you can know. Well, that's ridiculous. Of course you can know what happens. Some people feel, well, there is no more life. This is it. Live and be merry and go for broke while you're alive, because when you die, it's all over. Well, no, I'm sorry. Life is far, far more evolved than some measly 60, 70, 80 years in the physical body on this plane. It's far, far more evolved than that. Life here is in the physical body, but when this body leaves or dies and has to stay on this plane, we just move up into higher bodies. The astral body, you've all heard of that, and the causal body, which deals with cause and effect, and our intellectual or mind body, right? And then even above that, we've got our true essence of the soul. The churches and religions do not teach what the soul is. They ignorantly assume, and I say this with respect, but it's ignorance. They assume that one is already in the soul when they pursue their spirituality, and in truth, loved ones, when one comes on any spiritual path, they're in their ego-mind complex. And the reason they're having such a difficult time in life and why it's knocked them all over and why they're depressed and blue and scattered is because they're living their life out of their ego-mind complex. No one can live their life in perfect harmony out of these two entities, the ego and the mind. We've been taught we're the ego. We've been taught that we are the mind. And so when we come onto a spiritual path, I don't care if it's Christianity or Buddhism or Hinduism or whatever, we enter it and we start trying to spiritualize our ego mind, and none of these doctrines tell us otherwise. They say, no, this is who you are. And so now what we have is the ego and mind is trying to spiritualize itself and get to heaven, when in fact, it's been our own ego and mind that's created all of our karmas, all of our sins, and all of our adverse conditions, and given us the life of disharmony, as it were, from the very beginning. And so this is the big issue right here, loved ones, why people that love God and want to pursue spirituality, why they fail, because they do not get out of the ego-mind complex. And so this is a very, very key point when you're looking at being successful or not in your spiritual journey. This has to be addressed. The path you choose should be one that teaches you how to transcend your own ego and mind and resurrect your own soul and spiritual identity within you. If it does not talk about this, the chances are very good that it knows nothing about it.